Okay, so picking up right where we left off, the one thing we have to do before we begin coding is I mentioned in the first video that order and layer is very important to make sure that objects aren't covering or being covered by the wrong object. So the diner counter itself is at -1, and we said that the breadboard and the grill would be at 0, and then all the parts of the food you're cooking will be above that. So for the bun bottom, as far as the prefab, let's go ahead and make that order in layer 1. Let's make the burger patty order in layer 2. Let's make the ketchup 3. Let's make the mustard 4. And let's make the bun top 10. And the reason why we're going to jump that high is just in case you decide you want to add other toppings, pickles, onions, whatever. That way you can just put it in the in those in between numbers in the order and layer. So in fact, you might even want to move these up a little. Well, no, that's fine. I was going to say you might want to move these up too, but that should work. So now that the objects have been given an order and layer, actually let's do it with the hot dogs as well. So the roll back should be 1. The hot dog itself should be 2. And then the roll front, since it needs to be on top, will be 3. And then, like I said, at some point I'm going to import the ketchup and mustard graphics for the hot dog. So now what we need to do is when we click on either the rolls or the meat, they should appear on the corresponding either cutting board or grill. Now basically what we're going to do is, so as that objects get put in the right position when you click, rather than them having to drag and drop, we're going to create static variables. That way, with the static variable, we will track which positions are filled. So let's go ahead up to game object, create empty, and call this GM. So it's going to be a game master object. Calling it GM really doesn't mean anything other than to you, the designer. It's just reminding you what you're using it for. In fact, we can kind of just push that off the side of the screen. It's not going to have any graphics, but it's just going to be used to hold scripts that have overall connectivity functionality. So let's go ahead and right click, choose create C# script, and let's call this gameplay. I don't think that's a reserved word. Okay, so we're going to click on our GM object. We're going to put gameplay on it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to open that up. Okay. Now holding control, and we're going to scroll the roll the scroll wheel to zoom in a couple times, make it a little bit larger. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create those static variables. So public static let's use a string just in case there's multiple conditions we need, and it will be cutting board S1 for slot 1. Public static string cutting board S2 public static string. I try to make the variable names a little bit shorter than that, but since it auto-populates anyways, it gives you the suggestion of the words, the autocomplete when you're typing. It's not that big of a deal like in the old days where you actually had to remember exactly the name of the variable or you get an error. You could just select it from the drop-down list. And now we're going to do this one more time for the grill. So public static string grill S1, and let's just copy and paste because I feel like being lazy. S2, S3. So we have our 6 static variables, and it's going to be used. They're going to be used to track the 3 spots on the cutting board. Basically, it's like I said, it's like an inventory, as well as there's 3 slots on the grill. So, what we need to do is we now need to have a script attached to the bins, so as that we can click on it and have the objects appear where they need to. So create C#, and we'll call this we'll call it bin control. What we'll do is we need to click on hamburgers, hold control, hot dog bin, bun bin, and roll bin, and then just drag and drop bin control so they all 4 received that script. Now what we need to do is we need to have a script that checks when this is clicked on. Well, we have the script. What we need to do now is put in the routine that checks for it to be clicked on, which is the on mouse down routine. And what happens is we're going to have, when you click on it, we're automatically going to instantiate the corresponding object. So let's create variables for those objects, since we're going to need to instantiate them. So in bin control, these do not need to be static. So public transform, and we'll call this bottom bun OBJ. You don't have to do the OBJ at the end. I like to do that to remind myself that's an object. So like I said, when you see the drop-down list of autocomplete, you'll remember that, okay, that variable is an actual object. So public transform top bun OBJ, public transform so it'd be, just call it burger OBJ, public transform back roll OBJ, so the back half of the hot dog roll, public transform front roll OBJ, public transform hot dog OBJ. Now, just as we were able to attach the script to all of them at the same time, we can once again click on the objects. So hamburgers, hot dogs, bun, and roll, and drag and drop the objects just once and it'll attach it to all of them. So bun bottom, bun top, burger object, back roll, oops, I had to grab the prefab, not the image, and front roll, and hot dog. Now, the hot dog, the ketchup and mustard also need to have the click functionality. Let's hold off on that for now, but I got a feeling that I'll just use the same script attached to those. Or it's no big deal just to write a separate script for those two. A game like this, you're really not going to have it's not going to really impact performance one way or the other. So, in bin control, what we're going to do, I'm going to do something temporary and then I'm going to break it just so we can test that the clicking is working. So, outside of start, outside of update, we're going to add void on mouse down. And this is a predefined routine, so make sure you use capital OMD or else it won't work. So, this script is attached to 4 objects. If the mouse has been pressed down on one of those 4 objects, we then want to check the name of which object the mouse has been clicked on. So if game, so if game object dot name equals hamburger. Actually, let's do the buns first. So it's bun bin. So if GameObject.name equals bun bin, then what we want to do is we want to instantiate 2 things, the bottom bun and the top bun. And this is really going to start to demonstrate why ordering layer is important, because since the prefab has the order in the layer already set, it will automatically have these appear in the right order. So instantiate bottom bun object, and I think that's right around negative, let's take a look, let's click on the board. So something like negative 1.5, or negative 0.5 rather. So new vector 2, 0, comma, negative 5, and have to put in the letter F since it's, negative 0.5. Negative 0.5. You have to put in the F because it's a decimal. And if this is the first time you've seen the instantiate command, there's 3 arguments to it. There is what's being instantiated, where it's being instantiated, and then its rotation. So we want to use the bottom bun's own rotation. And then we have to instantiate the top bun. So, top bun object. Now this is going to be slightly higher on the board because the top bun, in addition to being overlaid on top of it because of ordering layer, it should also be physically vertically higher to make it look correct. So that should be all that's necessary to make this work. Okay, no error messages. We run it. Now if we click on these, nothing should happen because we're only checking for the name of bun. So we click on bun bin, perfect, and there it is. Now, what you're probably going to do is, again, just to test to make sure it's working, I had this top bun be higher than the lower bun, the bottom bun. But what you probably should do is every time a new ingredient shows up, the top bun should slide up a little bit higher. So this should start lower to begin with, then you put in the hamburger, it slides up a little bit so you can see the hamburger, you put in ketchup, slides up again. Depending on how much you guys want to see, we can do that. The main way you would make that happen is this variable for the top bun. The top bun would need to be, I just noticed an error. The top bun, rather than being a constant, it would have to be a variable. And that every time a new ingredient is clicked on, this number would change. This should say top bun, OBJ. So that's one of the pitfalls of copy and pasting. You've got to make sure you change everything that needs to be changed. In this case, it didn't make a difference. So now you can instantiate the bun. Okay, so what we want to be able to do now is we want to be able to instantiate a hamburger, and we want it to appear. Well, we can either do that, or we can proceed. Let's proceed with the buns, actually, because this is placeholder, okay? We are just testing that on mouse down works in the capacity that we wanted to, and sure enough it does. Now we need to actually create the inventory. So rather than jumping ahead to the hamburgers, let's actually just proceed with the bun itself. So we said there's going to be 3 locations. We defined that in the gameplay script. We said there's cutting board S1, 2, and 3. So what you have to do is we'll give these default values of empty. So the actual word empty, not just being null. Sometimes I'm kind of sloppy and I don't give it an initial value. So I'm trying to be a little bit more correct about this. So let's go ahead and save that. So by default, the 3 cutting board slots are empty. Alright, so what we're saying here is that we want to instantiate. Okay, when we click on the bun bin, we want a hot hamburger bun to instantiate, but we have 3 locations on that cutting board. So we don't want it to just default to this location. We want it to be able to detect which slot is open. So what we can do, and this won't be the most concise way to do it, but very often that's how game development works. You simply get something that works, and then you go back and you clean up the code, you optimize it. Not worried about optimization, I'm really more concerned with clarity. So within this if, we're going to have another if. And we're going to check those static variables. They're stored in gameplay, so we have to say it's gameplay, and there's cutting board 1 equals empty brackets. Okay, so if cutting board slot 1 is empty, then you're going to have it instantiate in wherever that slot should be. I notice that this is really too centered on the board, so this really should be more like -1 and -1. And let's just close that gap a little. Oops, wrong one. This one. Close that gap a little bit. And what we want is, we also need to say that this is now equal to occupied or full. Now we'll put in an else. Whoops, it doesn't like that. Oh, because it is gameplay cutting board. And now it's just kind of rinse and repeat. We now check for, so if this is not true, then it's going to try again. It's going to say if cutting board slot 2 is empty, and we'll move that over to 0. And cutting board 2 is full. Else if cutting board 3 is empty, and we move this over again by 1. So we might have to tweak some of these locations, but I think you get what we're doing, is that we're simply one by one checking the location. Is the first slot empty? Great. Drop it there and you're done. Okay, well it's not empty, so we need to check to see if the second slot is empty. Is the second slot empty? Okay. Drop it there and you're all set. Oh, wait a minute, the second slot is not empty, so let's check the third. Checks the third slot. Now what's nice about this is this also ignores if the cutting board is full. As you see, there's no code to handle that. So if the cutting board is full, nothing happens. This is also, if you're going to, say, have an expense associated with the using of resources, like you click on a hamburger, okay, well that just cost you 20 cents. You'd also have those variables in here. That if you have an expense per usage, you'd have it in here. Again, let's see how much you guys want, whether or not we want to even go that far. So I think that should actually do it. It should be that easy. Okay, no error messages. And so what should happen now is when I click on the hamburger bun, the first one should appear here, second one in the middle, third one off the side. Spectacular. And just like that, you've created an inventory system. So, what we're going to have to do is when you then grab the bun and give it to the customer, then you're going to have to make sure that wherever that functionality is, you set this back to empty. But the way this is devised, it will already work if, say, for some reason, you give someone the middle hamburger, you click on the roll, because of the way the code is written, it'll automatically put into the middle, because you'll see the first one is still full, it'll put it into the second one, and then it stops, because it doesn't need to go to the next else. So let's check the length of this video. Might stop here because we actually got through a good deal of functionality. If it hasn't been that long, I'll keep going. Otherwise, we'll pick this up in the next video.